in an ordinary business, what could be lurking around the corner or coming over the horizon that that's going to happen, which could make your business obsolete in the next 5 years or 10 to 15 years? Now, the answer is we very well know that there are changes the only constant. So there are things in the horizon, events that may happen, and what I like to do is I like to invite them to listen really closely, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to explain to you a business model that we've been working with at National Diversified and developing over the last 5 years. We have companies currently using this business model that are now leading their countries in growth rate, and we're winning wars as the number one type of company in their countries, their cities. So I'm going to introduce you to the model, and you need to beware here, because what you're going to hear is something that's going to really make a difference in your future. And to not adopt this, or at least not think it through, I just want to assure you that would be a big mistake. And we call this strategic aggregation. That's what we call this process, this model, if you like. And the simple premise is that it's built on the hardest thing to come by, the most expensive thing you could have to come by in your company, and that's customers, your customer or client acquisition. Now, customer acquisition is invariably one of the highest levels of expertise of your business, and yet most people do not optimize this. Most people in business do not optimize the value of their customer that it took them so much money to get. And the worst business model, of course, is the one where you have all that client acquisition or customer acquisition costs. You only sell one thing to that customer, to that client. Obviously, a better business model is a continuity relationship with that client, so that you don't just make money the first time first time your customers access your business, but you make money on an ongoing relationship. Now, that model gets even better when you have what's called a product cycle. And by product cycle, what I mean by this is people come to you, you have that marketing expense, they buy something from you, and then you have a method of reconnecting with that customer or client to sell them an ever-increasing array of products, usually more expensive than the ones that they bought the first time. So already you can see, just in those simple models that I give you, you have an intelligent business person. This is how an intelligent business person goes about a marketing process and expands the relationship between them and their clients, so that once they've had that very high acquisition cost, they have more and more ways to monetize that relationship with the client. Now, if you get that and you see the benefit of the 3 different business models and the evolution that to the first one, to the second one, and to the third one, then what I'm going to share with you may not seem quite so revolutionary as you might think, because it's an extension of that. And if our goal is to optimize the revenue that we have from our client, then why stop with our own product offerings? Why not have relationships with other companies who can also provide services and products to our client, where we can then take the client we have, and through developing a trusted relationship with that other company, we can create ways that we can feed leads from our customers to them for additional services. So now, as they apply that service or that product to our client, what we're getting is a piece of that revenue that they're creating, which is passive revenue to us. And this gives us another whole layer of income to earn on that client. So suppose we extend that concept not only forward to where we're referring our clients to other people for services and getting a piece of the revenue, but what if we had it extended to where other businesses who have a relationship with the type of client or customer who's our ideal client, what if we had a relationship where it was in their interest to refer or endorse that client or customer over to us, and we share with them a piece of the revenue that we now got from that customer? But invariably would probably be a lot less than what we pay for our original customer or client acquisition cost. So if you look at it from the standpoint of the model so far, we're creating relationships where we optimize the value of our clientele, where we create many revenue sources from them both internally and externally. And in particular, we create passive revenue that once the introductions are made, we don't have to do anything more for that. We just sit there and click coupons as the money comes in. Now, the problem with that is if you want to just do that as a one-off transaction or as an occasional type of exercise, now you've got a problem of how do you manage that process? How do you automate it? How do you make it simple and easy? But what if somebody who understood that model were to create a systemized, automated way that you could engage in those types of external relationships where the minute you plugged into the process, everything was automated from then on. You don't have to do the physical referrals. They get done automatically. You don't have to do the endorsements. They get done automatically. And once you put it in the system manages it. Now, what we've done in this process is, National Diversified, is we've created a business model and it's called strategic aggregation, as I said before. And we're aggregating companies together that have a reason to share clientele and to develop external revenue sources. So now once we've done that, the next step is going to be to take them public, because we're going to organize them in a way where they're going to come together eventually under one umbrella. They're going to be highly profitable as the companies that we've developed in these other countries that are leading the growth rate of businesses in their countries. And we're able to take these companies public for a major win for all the owners, where we've not only increased their revenue and increased their income. We've also put these companies together, and we do it in a way where it's organized around a common marketing theme that they all can sell into, that they can share clients, they can get front end and back end revenue. They can share cost centers that reduce their cost of doing business. And we make these companies so competitive that an independent company who's engaged in any one of these enterprises cannot compete with an aggregated company. Now, what you end up getting are aggregated companies devastating their competition and ending up owning their competition because the competitors just can't compete and end up selling out. So this is going to be, I think, a big eye-opener for virtually everybody who is selected to be involved. So, I mean, here's the deal. If your business is focused on internal methods of creating new sales, that's an old business model. It's a 20th century business model. And we're now in the 21st century. And so the 21st century business model is one that not only utilizes the customer relationship to drive internal sales, but you also create externally generated sales from the same client or the same customer. So you start to multiply your revenue opportunities from the clientele that you build. Now, internal and external are different. Internal is when you create the sales within your own organization. External is when you're being referred to other trusted associated companies that you know are going to take good care of their client and give them a viable solution to whatever that issue is that you're referring them on for. So not only do we look at how we support the sales process by optimizing the value of their client and their customer, but the other side of the equation is cost savings. Cost savings, now why is that important? Well, anybody in business knows that if you're going to sell a product or service, you can't sell right unless you buy right. You can't sell right if you don't keep your costs down. So as much as business is a function of creating new sales, it's also a function of how do I cut my costs or while giving better service. Well, the whole process of aggregation not only takes in and aligns these companies from a sales point of view, but it aligns them from a cost point of view, and it takes and converts what are typically cost centers for a business, and it converts the cost centers into profit centers. Now, how in the world do you do that? Well, I'm going to give you an example, a modern day example. So take a company like Amazon. Now, it's a company everybody knows. Everybody who's ever bought anything on the net at one time or another, has bought something from Amazon. Well, let me explain to you this. If you don't already know this, it's something they did that was extraordinary and brilliant. What they did is they took everything that they had to do to be a prime company on the internet, and they said, whatever we have to do for ourselves, let's set it up as a service to do for other people who have a similar or complementary need to what we do. In that way, we'll be able to do it on such a large scale that we can be more competitive in our costs than anyone else doing what we're doing, and we can turn our cost centers into profit centers. So, for example, if you want to have a website, which is something that Amazon needs to have, and you need to store that data that you have to use on that website, you can store it on Amazon probably cheaper than you can store it at any place else. If you have a need for content distribution around the world, well, Amazon have to distribute their abilities all around the world. So they built a content distribution network that not only is a state of the art for themselves, but then they market that ability for other people to use it. And so they have built a full array of services around what their typical cost centers would have been, so that these are all now profit centers and they make money. So instead of costing Amazon money to support them, they support Amazon. Now, we do that we do that for businesses as well. And how do we do that? Well, let's take all these companies we put together in the aggregation. What we do is we have those companies aggregated. There are certain services that they need in common, and up until we aggregated them, each one had their own thing going on. They paid a full cost of it, whatever it needed to be, full time or not, because they had to have it. So let me give you an example of one. A call center where people can call in and place orders or whatever it is that they would be doing through that call center. Well, once we aggregated these companies, we put in a common call center. That call center becomes a profit center. It's run on the basis of making the whole operation of call centers way more profitable. So instead of having one company have its own call center that operated 9 to 5 days a week, they now tap into aggregated call center for less money than they were paying for their single call center. They're tapped into a call center that operates 24/7 with highly trained people that are designed to know, they're trained to know their products, know their services, and be able to effect that a way lower cost than they were able to do when they were a standalone company. And the call center can become a hub of making sure that all of these referrals from company to company to company can get done. And then you lay under that an automated process that knows who every client was bought into the aggregated group, who bought in their client, and we create a compensation method where everybody's compensated when their client buys from everybody else in their organization. That is all automated through our automated systems. Now, when you have a system that cuts cost in many ways, besides the way I've just explained it, and optimizes the client value by putting them through way more revenue sources than the standalone business has, you can see where we're able to drive sales higher. We're able to do it for less cost. We're able to cut the cost of business operation, which gives them more margins, higher margins for the same level of sales, because a lot of their back-end revenue is pure profit. It's pure profit. I mean, they don't do anything for it. So when you have extremely high margins that are way higher than your competition, if you're in business, I don't have to tell you how you can make use of that. You can now drop your price on your current products or services. You're still making way more money than your competition. You're giving better service because you've got your cost savings down, and you've tapped into systems that are now designed to take that cost savings and provide a better service. And now that that's considered, you're now able to outcompete the competition because they can't compete with your prices. They can't meet your goals. They can't meet your margins, and you drive them out of business. So who are the experts required to run this system? Well, typically at National Diversified, the way we do it is we have what we refer to as a core team that are cross-trained in all of the skill sets and competencies that are necessary to affect one of these, including the automation systems, literally everything. So what we do is we systematically work with the staff of a company to, over a reasonable period of time, work with them on a system-by-system basis and introduce all of this into the company so that the company can move forward with this as quickly as is appropriate for their staff to work on it. I mean, you start with the simple stuff like, how do we tie you in on a joint venture with some of the people who would precede you in the marketing process? Like, whose clients would be referred to you? Then what we do is we would look at who would you be referring clients to you, and we set that system up. Then underneath that, you would have the automation system that we would train somebody in the staff how to just make sure everything is connected properly. So these are the kind of things where it's sophisticated enough and it would be really hard for somebody to do it themselves. Although at the very least you can be thinking as an independent business person about who could you do these things just on a simple joint venture with. Instead of trying to do it with all the possibilities of how you could do it, at least start with one or two or three of them and think about how you can get somebody to refer you business. How can you set up a joint venture with that company so it's worth their while to make that referral and endorsement over to you? How can you set up a joint venture with some of the people who sell services or products to the same customers that you're selling to, or at the same time that those people are buying products and services from you? So you can start just at least thinking through that process. And once you start thinking through that process, you can start with just one or two of the pieces and just put them in place. They'll start making money for you virtually immediately. So it's a very short lead time to money when you do it that way. And there are companies out there who have a product that's in front of your audience and you can joint venture with them in some way. I mean, the process can start very simply, but when you want to put it on steroids, then you come to somebody like us, National Diversified Funding. I mean, that's what we do. We put up the money, we do the whole process, and we put up the money to set up the systems. We know where every pound or dollar is going to come from to make this happen. We know where every dollar is going to come from to pay for the dollars it takes to make this happen. And the one thing that's nice about this is we qualify people before we work with them, so that we know they have a platform in place that we can work with. But once we know the process and it works, let me tell you, this thing will crack you up. Let me tell you about some of the deals we've worked with, some of the things we've actually done. We have one company we work with in Chile, which was one of the prototypes we did. We did this for about 6 years. And we started with a company that we did business to business, who did business to business products. They were a promotional advertising business. They did promotional pens and USBs with your name on it. And you could give these away, products like calendars, all kinds of promotional products. And then we started looking to who we could aggregate them with. So anyway, I'm definitely going to make this long story short. We aggregated them the first year with 4 or 5 companies. So you've got to forgive me, it's a while back. I don't remember the exact number, but anyway, the company that we pulled them together with, who are now front-ending and back-ending and cross-marketing with each other, we took their sales combined and we multiplied them by 200% in the first year because of cross-marketing. Now the second year, we added another 5 companies to the aggregation, and then it's a 10 company group now, and that grew by 200% again. So they essentially tripled. If you run through numbers, they tripled their income the first year and they tripled their income the second year. So okay, now the third year we added 5 more companies, so now we're up to 15 companies aggregated, and their growth rate went over 1,000%, 10 times. Now that is huge. That is so off the charts. That is so atypical that we had to ask ourselves, what happened here? Why did that happen? Well, here's what we did. We found out, you see, once we put in the aggregated model, what happened is that their sales started to increase and their costs started to decrease. So now they're able to lower prices as a result of the fact that they've got more revenue coming in on any given amount of their core business sales. So their margins go up. They're also making more profit. So what did they do with their profit? Well, what they did with their profit is they put some of it back in to give like a better customer service. So they've got lower prices than the competition. They're giving better service than the competition. And the third thing they did with the money is they paid their people higher rates than the competition. So here's what happened by year 3. Not the last group of 5 that we put in there, but the ones that there were for the preceding 2-year period. What happened was that in their competitive space, they were so hard on the competition. Now, put yourself in a position of a salesperson for your competition. They're competing with you, right? You're giving better service, you're charging less, and the people who have your job, they're getting paid more money. what are you going to do? You're going to say, well, how do I go over there and take my customers with me? So what happened in the third year is all of a sudden, all these people who are working for the competition, those who controlled the client relationship, started moving over to the aggregated competitor. What happened was the other companies literally were dropping like flies. They're going out of business, and this company could have grown at a higher rate than the 1,000%, but they had to curtail their growth because they ran into a second problem. And the second problem was the capacity to deliver. See, all of a sudden, they didn't have enough inventory. They didn't have enough resources. They didn't have enough of that. So what they did was, and here's where we really came to the rescue. We took a look at those those competing companies that were now failing, and we were able to buy some of them at bargain prices and bargain terms, not for their client bases. The aggregated companies already had that, but we were buying them for their inventories, for their trucks, for their delivery equipment, for all the other things that they needed, which we were able to pick up at bargain prices through the acquisition of those companies or their assets. And so in the fourth year, the capacity to deliver a problem that was developed out of the aggregated model. The point that I'm trying to get to is, it's very simply like, this model is so superior to the standard 20th century business model. I mean, yes, it's more complex. Yes, it takes more work to make it all come together and happen, but it's definitely worth it. And what we found is, rather than try and convince business people that they need to come up with the money to do this, that they need to come up with the staff, that they need to handle all the training, we just look at the companies. We see who qualifies. We work with them to wrap around them all the aggregator companies that they would need. And we facilitate the process. And then at the end, when the thing really comes together, we bring them at that point all under one corporate umbrella, with the objective to either IPO on for a major win at a high multitude of their earnings because of the phenomenal growth, or to at least position it for a strategic buyer. Well, we have a lot of contact information at www.nationaldiversified.com, and quite a few tools and resources at Sage Tactics, www.sagetactics.com. So between these two sites, in there you'll find sections in there that will explain about strategic aggregation, so you can get more information about it. Now, this is not something that somebody should think of in terms of being the panacea to all things, like, well, I'm going to drop everything and I'm going to go and do this. So it's not the panacea to everything. Okay, what you do is you start piece by piece until you see how it comes together. You know, with some good solid joint ventures that start bringing in money, and then you take that money and that good result, and then you use that to move forward and form your aggregation.